Start. So good morning, everybody. I'm Olivier, CEO of Breakevens Group, and I'm happy to welcome you this morning for our webinar about the new EU labeling regulations in partnership with Bottlebook and its CEO, Jonathan. So I'm going to give the speech to Jonathan soon, but if you have any question during the webinar, you can use the chat and I will ask the question directly to Jonathan. So I can interrupt him at any time if you have any question during the presentation. So Jonathan is going to give us first the new EU labeling regulation and after the solution offered by Bottlebook. So Jonathan, it's your turn now.
Thank you, Olivier, and welcome everybody to this webinar. Thank you for joining us. It is a rather timely topic. The new EU regulations, many of you are probably already familiar with what's coming. They don't take effect until December 8th, but as many of you are looking at printing labeling in the next few months, obviously now is a good time to prepare. So I hope you find this presentation helpful. For those of you who don't know Bottlebooks, we are a wine data software business based headquartered here in Munich, Germany. We also have offices in Porto, Vienna, and London. And the focus of our business is to streamline data processes in the wine industry. We are a global business. We work with major retailers here in Europe. We work with many of the national wine associations. They use our software to run their events, to collect the data from their members, publish catalogs, publish online directories. We work with many importers. We do have a bit of a focus in the UK still, but that's changing quickly. And we're also partners of ProWine, London Wine Fair, Via Vinum, Wine Searcher, Masters of Wines. They all use our software to collect information from their exhibitors or from wineries for their educational programs and for their events. And our software, we estimate now, since we've been in business, we have eliminated about 3.5 million Excel forms. Why do you call somebody like Bottlebooks? Well, you call us when you want to improve your data, when you think your data could be more organized, if you think your data processes could be more structured, that's what we do. And we have extended our product over the past year to also handle the new EU labeling requirements, and that's what we'll talk about today. So just before we get in, it's important that we do make a disclaimer. We are going to talk about regulations in this presentation, but this document should not be considered as legal advice. It is our interpretation. We think it is a conservative interpretation, but it is nevertheless our interpretation of the current draft legislation. And this is subject to change based on if the EU amends the text or provides additional clarifications in other channels. So what is the new EU regulations? So at the core of this is that they are removing the labeling exceptions for wine and spirits. So as you know, until now, you have not had to include the same information on wines as other products that you find at a grocery store or other consumer goods. And this exception is basically being removed. And what that means is that you now need to include an ingredients list and nutritional information for your wine. You have two options. You can either print this on the label or you can provide this information digitally through a QR code. This applies to all wines and spirits bottled after December 8th, 2023. This specifics is again something that may change based on the final legislation. But at the moment, the current assumption is that if it's labeled or bottled before December 8th, that this does not affect this vintage. Let's focus on ingredients first. So there are a few things that are being introduced for wine. So for ingredients, you do need to include all the ingredients that go into your product. And this needs to be translated into every country where you are actively marketing your wine. Now, of course, your wine may travel over the border. Somebody could come visit your winery on holiday and then take a case back with them. But that you don't need to label your wine for somebody who comes on holiday. But if you are actively marketing your wine in that other country, you do need to do a translation of the ingredients into that country. There are some new standards introduced for wine because of the unique characteristics of wine, that some fillings are going to be treated differently from other fillings. So being able to indicate that, such as contains and or, these are things that allow you to print a complete e-label or complete complete ingredient list, even if you have slightly different need to have slightly different approaches for different fillings of the same wine. Also, there are some tailorings as well, further tailorings around the bottling processes. You don't need to include the gases themselves in the ingredients list. You can just add a text at the end, bottled in a protective atmosphere, or maybe bottled in a protective atmosphere instead of indicating the gas. Some of the background of this is avoiding consumer confusion about what is actually in the wine versus what is used to do packaging. Nutrition information also needs to be provided. And this is something that you'll be familiar with from other consumer products. And it is neither more complex nor simpler than what you see on other products. The energy value must be calculated, or must be provided. It can be calculated. There are accepted, established formulas that can be used to calculate the energy from your analytics data if you don't have an actual energy value provided by your lab. So you don't need to do a special process just to get your energy value. There are several values on your label which will almost certainly be 0 all the time for wine, but they must be indicated nevertheless. You do need to declare if something is 0 for the ingredients that you see here. And a further note is that the energy is something that is special with regards to the new legislation. Just because you put the energy value in behind a QR code, you still must include this on your printed label. Energy value is something that is unique here. What else is required? First off, the wine, it must be clearly identifiable that the product that you just scanned, if you're using an e-label, of course, that if you scan a QR code on a bottle, what you see, a consumer should be able to easily confirm that the information they are seeing in the e-label corresponds to the product that they have in their hand. That does mean at the moment, if you have a conservative interpretation of the EU legislation, that means that it's one e-label per vintage, one e-label for each size. Of course, we would all like to have this be simpler, but this is something that needs further clarification before you'll find software companies endorsing a more liberal use of this. I think many softwares will allow you to leave the vintage off and leave the volume, leave the format off, Bottlebooks included. But we will tell you that it's required, and we will warn you when you publish your e-label that the information is incomplete. So our advice is conservative, but we do also ultimately let you do and take the responsibility as a winery for doing your labeling the way you want to. And as I indicated, the translation must be done into the languages where the wine is marketed. Many of the software products, well, Bottlebooks at least, we do automatic translation for all of the legally required information. So all of the ingredients and all of the nutritional tables, this is all automatically translated using EU certified text into the different languages. So you just need to complete the form in your own language, and then Bottlebooks takes care of the rest automatically. What else is allowed? So there is additional information that is allowed to be put on the e-label. So regulated terms, so denomination, variety, production method, things that are regulated you can include on the e-label. Certifications, sustainability, organic, and also responsible consumption can be included on the label. These things are not required. They are simply things that you can additionally include on your label. Again, besides ingredients and the nutritional table, anything else that is currently required on your print labels will still be required on the print labels. So if your country requires advisory for having icons for not consuming alcohol while pregnant, etc., these are unchanged by the legislation.
Jonathan, yeah,
yes.
I have a first questions coming.
Please.
Is the EU providing a list of ingredients that must be included on the ingredient list?
Yes, they are. So this is not in the draft legislation, but actually it is in a supporting legislation from a couple of years ago that identify all of the ingredients that can be included in the winemaking process.
And I have another question. Do we have to provide all this information also on our own page? I guess on page of website or this kind of.
No, currently that is not part of the draft legislation. That the only place that you must have this information is at the point of sale.
Okay. Another one coming as well. Does the nutrition table need to be printed on the label itself and not only registered on the QR code?
If you have it on the QR code, it does not need to be on the label. Only the energy value from the nutrition information must be on the label. Always.
Okay, thank you. No more questions for the moment.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So what is forbidden? So we've talked about what is required, what is allowed, what is forbidden. The top thing that is forbidden in all of this is tracking. So no Google Analytics, no Google Fonts, or any other technology that tracks the consumer or requires consent before showing information. This is something that basically makes it very difficult for producers to use their own website to meet the EU regulation, because many businesses are capturing analytical data through their website, and this would require deactivating a specific part of your website for when somebody scans the QR code. Also, you cannot include marketing messages, promotions, or links to buy on the e-label. You can link to more information, but ultimately, the reason why the EU is doing this is for better or for worse to try and limit consumption and reduce consumption of alcohol. And so advertising discounts on buying alcohol is, going against what the EU is trying to achieve for better or for worse. And that is why it's important to be aware of what is allowed on the label and what has to be located behind a more information link. As I briefly touched on before, can I use my own website? Technically you can. All the documentation to do e-labeling is public domain. You can do the research and do it. What we have found though is that in all of the communications we've seen, all the documentation we've seen, webinars that we've joined as participants, we have not seen any winemaker associations or legal representation for the wine industry advising producers to do this on their own. All of the ones that we have seen, they have been encouraging members to evaluate third-party providers because of the challenges and the risks associated with keeping a website online, QR code links going broken, and so on. So it's perhaps self-serving coming from a vendor of e-label software, but this seems to be the current advice going around. You will be liable when links break. This is perhaps the biggest risk in doing a QR code on your own, linking to your own website. is that if you don't do, as many people may rush in and do a free QR code that cannot be updated in the future. And if it's hard coded to a particular page on your website and you want to change your website in the future, that can potentially break all of your QR codes, or cause additional cost in updating your website, because all these QR codes you created 5, 10 years ago that you need to keep around because those wines still could be somewhere, could still be in somebody's cellar. These are all things that really, slow down your website development and limit you in the future for your marketing website. And also, I think when you get to the prices, the costs of using a third-party solution, having a company who is watching this topic for you, they are relatively inexpensive compared to the costs of doing it yourself.
Jonathan, I have
Yes.
new questions coming. The next one is, will stickers with the QR code be allowed in order to allow us to use up any labels already printed that do not contain the new regulatory info?
That's a good question. We have customers who are planning to do exactly that, especially, and not even to use up old labels, but we also have international customers from overseas who are already applying stickers with importer information on them for the wines that they import into the EU. So they have a single label that they use in multiple countries, also outside the EU, and then they apply an additional sticker with existing EU requirements on it. So while the draft legislation doesn't say yes or no and whether it has to be on one sticker or 2 stickers, already the EU is allowing the use of a second sticker for indicating importer information. And so it's a good question. I think, again, this is not legal advice, but there is no indication that we have seen that would prevent you from applying stickers to your existing labels or somewhere else on the bottle.
Another one, does the new regulation means that we can simplify the current back labels and shift almost all information to the QR code?
Yeah, that's a definite no. So anything that is currently legal required on the back label must stay. So it's only the digital labeling, the e-labeling is only impacting the new information that you can put the ingredients list and the nutritional table behind a QR code. No changes. The new legislation brings no further changes to the back label.
Christian, I don't know if you can answer, but do you think the producers are ready for this by December 8th, or will it be a problem for many?
So I think the biggest question is when you are printing your packaging. You have a number of vendors on the market that have software that is either in sync with the draft legislation or is being updated for the draft legislation. So having a solution or an option to implement this, they already exist and they're already ready today. So then it comes down to timelines, and we do know that for some producers, the timelines, they're already starting to print packaging for the next 2 or 3 years, and they're having to make decisions about what they do relatively quickly. So there is a bit of time pressure on this. The other answer I would give, which is admittedly a bit self-serving, is that why not get started with QR codes today? The EU legislation is not in effect until December 8th. So we have a couple of customers that have added QR codes this year that are redirecting them to their online shops and other things just to get, analytics while they can and get experience with QR codes before the regulations come in and they have to switch over to a formal e-label. We can talk about visions for the future, but I think at Bottlebooks, we see also that the EU regulation, while it's being introduced because of the anti-cancer campaign and because of just increasing consumer information on the wine, we see this as the start of the death of the barcode. because, as you know, barcodes, they don't account for vintages. That's one of the biggest issues with them. And so they have some, and if you're running an online shop, you're not even using barcodes at all for that. Whereas with QR codes, you can do a lot more than just share information on the product. It can be used in logistics. They can use in the UK, there's solutions that are looking into using it for taxes. And so, I would say that the sooner you start your QR code journey, the sooner you get more familiar with what's out there and what you can do besides only providing consumer information with QR codes.
Okay, thanks. Another question, could we use these labels with the QR code for the outside EU countries?
Yes, you can also show, there's no, in the other countries that we're familiar with, say the US or in Asia as well, there's no legal requirements or legal restrictions on what you do with the QR codes in those countries. But they also don't allow you to remove from back label to QR code. We've also investigated this for China, and you can have a QR code for China, but it doesn't allow you to not have a Chinese back label, for example.
Okay, this applies to both wines and spirits, or only wines?
Wines and spirits.
Okay. And another question, the bottles that are already labeled before December 8th are not into the new regulations?
Correct.
Everything starts from the labeling after December 8th, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And also, as I indicated, it's also bottling. So and let's be fair, it's going to be a fuzzy line. I mean, who is really going to know whether you as a winery bottled on December the 7th or on December the 9th? We would expect a bit of leeway, but this, again, don't take legal advice. But I think these are some things that are even like the best advice out there is that there's some fuzziness around this, but it's better to be safe than sorry.
So with the same question coming, an intermediate product also?
For bulk wine,
Yeah,
this is targeting finished product, so where the consumer comes in contact with it.
Okay. And also, if you sell the product later, you have to follow the new regulation. I guess it's yes.
It's yes for the moment. I think there is still, there's still some lack of clarity in the EU regulation about how few QR codes you will ultimately need to create. But if you're selling it later, it's safe to assume that you need a QR code at the moment, or it's safe to assume this.
Does it change the QR code with any update and the information, or remains still the same, even if you make any update on the e-label?
This really depends on your provider, on your vendor. So in the case of Bottlebooks, the QR code can be updated with information at any time. It can be redirected to any site at any time. So you have that flexibility to make changes at any time. As you'll see in the demo, we actually start by creating a QR code in our software as opposed to the e-label. And we can talk briefly about that in the time we still have.
Yeah, sorry, I misunderstood for one of the question. I mean by intermediate product, it's 15 to 39% of alcohol. I mean between wine and spirits. So when I ask you an intermediate product also has to prepare e-labels. So I mean QR code or new regulation, EU new regulation.
Yes, I mean basically what's happening with the EU regulation is that it's removing the exemption for alcoholic products. So I think that's the easier way to understand it, is it's just removing the exemption so that all alcoholic products must now be labeled.
Okay, thank you. No more question.
So something that we have been creating with 3 other companies who make e-labels is because there is so much lack of clarity from the EU on what the minimum requirements are. We have decided to found an initiative called Safe E-Label, and this is done with 3 other companies who have also added e-label solutions to their software. And the aim of this is to ensure that there is an open resource that businesses can use to help ensure that they're compliant with the EU regulations. So we will be consolidating all of a conservative interpretation of the EU regulation as it evolves, and be publishing it on the Safe eLabel.org website. There's 4 main principles on here that we are supporting as a group. One is that we do want to have a strict implementation of regulations. So we should only make conservative claims and should not advise you to do anything that is more liberal. That's up to you to make that decision, but we won't provide you advice to take those steps. You do need to be looking seriously at your vendor for business continuity. What if Bottlebooks doesn't exist tomorrow? Do we have a plan? Does the other vendors have a plan? What happens? Because if your wine is going to be around for 10, 20, 30 years, your QR codes also have to work for 10, 20, 30 years. How is your vendor going to support that? Thirdly, free to leave, portability. This somehow ties potentially back into business continuity, because if you have a vendor that gives you a clear way of leaving their solution, then it helps you have certainty over business continuity. And we believe that it's very important to provide an off-ramp to all of our customers. We're going to fight to keep you. We're going to fight to keep you happy. But if we can't do that, if you find some other better option, we will provide you a way of leaving our service that you won't have to pay us once you terminate the contract. And you will have a way of taking your e-labels with you. And finally, ethical data standards. There are some companies out there that in their terms and conditions, they take ownership of your data. Any data you enter into their website to create an e-label, they claim ownership of. And the businesses who implement the Safe e-label standard do not do that. They might have an opt-in, they might provide services for you to share your data through their software, but it's an opt-in process. It's not a data land grab for them. So check out safeelabel.org, and there'll be something that's really fresh. And I also saw, I think, Philippe Hougan on the call today from Vincod in France, and he's also one of the founding companies of the Safe e-label standard with us.
I have another question,
yes,
Jonathan, and
please.
I think you already answered, but maybe you can give more details. We already have a QR code on the back of our bottles with a link to our website. If marketing is forbidden, can we still do this? Can we just add product into the same QR code for each product and add product as well?
We won't probably be providing legal advice on that and looking at individual solutions. There is a lot, as I mentioned, there's a few clear things that are not allowed that provide even sometimes more of a challenge than just the information. So without seeing the website, and also we're making sure our software is compliant, and that's enough of a job. Yeah, it's difficult to make a comment on that specifically.
Okay.
So maybe briefly in the few minutes, I know we're running just over the half hour now, but maybe in the final few minutes, I take you through a very short demo of Bottlebooks. There's 4 things that we focus on in our software. We want to make it legal, we want to make it portable, and we want to make it easy. So we have taken all of the regulations and consolidated them into a single form. If you complete this form, then you are adhering to the best interpretation of, or a conservative interpretation of the EU regulations. We are also including national regulations in our software. The first one is Italian environmental requirements. So if you're an Italian producer or you're distributing in Italy, you know that you must include recycling, the packaging information and where to recycle. That's also part of our software. So not just EU, but also national regulations. And we will be tracking and adding more national regulations as they come into effect. We do provide automatic translation for ingredients and nutritional information into the different languages. There are places to add custom text and custom ingredients, which you need to translate yourself. But for all of the standard values, these are all translated into all the European languages. And finally, we want you to be able to create a QR code while you're on your tractor in the field and send it to your label printer. So we do make this software also responsive for your cell phone. Let me quickly, before I get into pricing, let me jump into a quick demo. So what you see on our screen is our e-label dashboard. When you create a new e-label, just click an e-label. You can give it a name. And you already at this point have a QR code. This QR code can be downloaded and sent to your printers. At the moment, there is a landing page if you scan it, so that you make sure the right QR code gets right on the right back label. At this point, you can also, if you want to, you can even redirect it to your website or anything or somewhere else. But let's go ahead and continue creating the e-label. So here you can choose from all of your product types. We're going to do a still wine. You can choose individual countries or choose all the countries. And by choosing the countries, this is what's configuring the software, not only for national regulations, but also for language, because some things that we discovered even during the process are countries like Belgium, you know, that they would expect information in Dutch and in French, but we didn't know that also it was legally required to provide information in German. So for Belgium, you actually have 3 languages you must provide information for your e-labels. And this is what's all configured in the software. Entering information, you can enter it from scratch. You can have existing e-labels that you copy from, such as creating a new vintage. Or if you've imported your data or are already using Bottlebooks, then you can copy the data from your Bottlebooks portfolio. And we're going to do just that. We're just going to choose a nice looking rosé. And when you select the wine, then your draft e-label is already created. So you can see that here on the right-hand side, all the information that you had on this wine is already pre-filled. Here is the single form where it's a very easy to enter form. Let's go down to ingredients. And so let's go ahead and start adding some of the ingredients to the list. As you see, you have a live update over here. Let's go and add a few acidity regulators so you can see some of the new EU regulations and the draft legislation. So as you can see, the ingredients appear here. Allergens are highlighted in bold. Acidity regulators are grouped together, and we're using the word contains because perhaps you might be using one or the other acidity regulator in your list at different times. You can sort these into priority in the production process, and everything is automatically updated in your draft. When we go to the nutrition table, as you can see, we've already imported the analytics and calculated the energy. You can also enter it manually if you want to. You can then go through and enter the remaining information that you need to enter for the table, and you can see it automatically configured. You can also use an alternate portion size, which also is added here on the left if you want to do that. Then certifications, you can choose from all of our certifications. If we don't have something on the system, you are always allowed to add custom certification, custom ingredients, certifications. We have some standard ones to make it easy, but then you can also add your own. When we get down into packaging and recycling, this is what you are doing to conform to the regulations in Italy. So here you're able to choose that your wine is in a bottle, it's clear, the material is clear glass. And you start to see the recycling taking place down here, and the closure, let's say this is cork. And yeah, so this is now compatible also with the Italian regulations. So you're meeting the EU regulations and the Italian regulations all at the same time. So let's say that you've added in the rest of the information and you're ready to publish. Then you can just very easily up here click publish. You can leave yourself a note and click publish. Now this version that is published is live. If you scan the QR code, this is the version that you will see on your phone. You can come back in and start making changes at any time. So that was a question earlier. So what if you made a mistake and you realized, shoot, I had a typo here. I need to actually make that 80%. And so you can come and fix it. You can see now that you need to republish the label. So this is just a draft version. It's not public. You can't see this publicly. And so you can just fixed percentage. And now you have the next version is now live. At any point in time, you can go in and see all the different versions that you published. You can go back and see older versions in the live preview. So you can always go back and see, okay, what was actually the issue there? And you can even republish old versions. But this version history here provides you a clear traceability and compliance trail for your organization, so that you are always in control of your e-labels. So that's just a brief summary of a brief demo of the software. Yeah.
Yeah, I have some questions, Jonathan.
Sure.
Can be used the same e-label with different brands if we have the same wine under different brands?
The guidance from the legislation right now is that the consumer must be able to easily identify that the wine, that the information that they've scanned on the QR code is matching the product that they have in the hand. Our conservative interpretation is that it needs to include a bottle shot, which means that you would need a different QR code for each of those brands. We'll leave it up to you for that interpretation. You can omit the bottle shot. You can omit a lot of this information and do that with our software. We're going to tell you that it's wrong, but you can ultimately publish the QR code. You take the responsibility for the data, not us. But we're also hoping that we get more clarity from the EU before it's finalized. But for right now, the conservative interpretation would be you should have a QR code for each of the products and the
Even,
like I said,
even if the ingredients and nutrition information are exactly the same?
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's hard to know that the bottle and what the wine in your hand is it's fuzzy. Let's put it that way. Let's say from our perspective as Bottlebooks, we also hope that this gets simpler. It would be great for some of our bulk wine producers that, they might have 20 or 30 different blends, but they might have 200 or 300 labels. It would be fantastic for them to have one QR code for each blend that they can use on all of their labels. So as soon as that is allowed, we would update our software to remove the warning that we have if you try and do that today, and we would actually suggest this approach, but that's not a conservative interpretation of the EU regulations as they stand.
Okay, another question. The regulation EU 2021 and 2117 applies to the wine sectors. Which EU regulation defines spirits beverage rules? Example, gin.
I would have to search for the exact number for that one, but yeah, I'll have to search for the regulation, but the regulation, the draft regulation is what removes it from spirits and wine both. It's just that wine has more nuanced production practices, and you need to treat different fillings differently. So there are some special allowances or special adaptations for wine production. That's why you see wine in the draft legislation more commonly mentioned than spirits.
Okay. When you change the version, the QR code, it's still the same?
Correct. The QR code never changes. The QR code itself never changes. When you go in, what we have is we have a two-step process. So the first thing is a redirect. So all of our QR codes have a redirect URL that's encoded into them. So this is what is encoded in this QR code. And then when you are using Bottlebooks to publish e-labels, when you publish a new version of this, we update this QR code to point to the latest version of your e-label. And also, if you want to redirect your QR code to some other site, such as, if you one day, if we can't keep you with us and you decide to move to somebody else, this is where you could redirect your QR code to the new service. But this remains the same. The QR code continues to function. And yeah, once you've created this will always work, and you can always change what it does.
Okay, thank you. And packaging and recycling info is compulsory?
It's not compulsory if you're not selling in Europe. Sorry, in Italy at the moment. At the moment, it's only Italy that has this information compulsory.
Okay.
But it's likely that other countries will follow. And it's fairly straightforward. Anybody who's been working, like we see this also in the UK, for example, they have a lot more structured waste disposal taxes that need to be accounted for. So there's, yeah, so we would expect this to be taken up now by more countries. Italy just happens to be leading on this.
Okay, so you could use a template for a wine with different labels and then change the photo in each wine, creating a different code?
Exactly. So yeah, exactly. So you could take this e-label that we've done now, this Rosé 2020, and the next time you go through, then you could say, you know, Rosé label 2. And now we can go through and create the e-label. Okay, we still make you choose where it's going to go. But then the content itself, you can copy from an existing e-label and choose from the 2020 that we had just created, and then copy the information over. So exactly. So if you have a template, then this is what allows you to create the other ones without having to re-enter all the information. And as you can see, the corrections are there. All the information that we entered is there. Oh, looks like I found a bug. We didn't copy over the nutritional table, so we'll fix that after this call. But yeah, that's how you would be able to copy over and reuse data.
Okay, thank you. No more question for the moment.
Great. Okay. So then that's just a quick overview of our software. And maybe last but not least is how do you buy it from us? So we have a simple and transparent pricing. It's based on how many e-labels you need to create per year. So if you need to create 20 e-labels per year, then this is what you would pay. So the cost is for 20 e-labels, 250, 35 is 300. And depending on how many e-labels you need, you can go up and down. It's really just about how many you need to create for that year. We don't charge you for back labels. So there are some services out there that you know, that quickly get very expensive because you have to pay maintenance on older labels. Our pricing is based only on how many e-labels you need to create this year, which we feel fits much better for the wine industry. We also allow to use a custom domain. So we talked about portability earlier, and that you can redirect our QR codes at no cost. However, if you want to go further and actually have your own domain in there, such as instead of q.bottleinfo, if you want to actually have like qryourdomain.com, that is also possible. But there is an additional cost to doing this, but then actually in the QR code, it would say your company's name. And we do have larger customers that are doing that. We do have right now an early bird discount. So if you do make your decision before April 15th, then you can enter a discount code here for Break Events 40 and get 40% off on not just this year, but next year and the year after that in perpetuity. Which means that instead of paying 250 for 20 labels, you only pay 150 per year.
I have a question, Jonathan, about the price. These prices include unlimited maintenance. I mean, for each QR code, there is no extra cost. If we have to follow up the QR code, if there is any technical problem, it's included in everything.
I missed the first part of the question.
I mean, this is for all these prices. It's included unlimited maintenance. I mean, unlimited.
Yes. Yes. So basically, if you want to continue keeping your QR codes live on our service in the future, then you would need at least to have the minimum package here. So let's say that you, if you want to leave your leave your QR codes live, or your e-labels, not your QR codes. QR codes are free, but the e-labels, if you want to use our publishing and keep those live, even if you move on to another vendor, then you would need at least a minimum package. But yeah, you can make as many updates as you want. You can update next year. You can update the QR codes from this year. That's not an issue, or that doesn't cost you anymore. It's really about if you make 18 wines a year, and you need 18 labels a year, then you just pay 150 a year if you use the 40% discount here, and that's it. And you can have each year you can add another 18 or 20 e-labels every year. So, you know, in 10 years, you could have 200 e-labels out there, and you're still only paying 150 euros per year to have all of those on there.
Even if you increase the number of labels next year, you will keep the discount code. I mean, if you order the first year 20 labels, and next year you are going to order 35, are you going to keep the discount code?
Yes, that is a good question as well. So if you are moving between plans, then the discount code would apply.
Oh, yeah, you can. Okay.
And we could also see, you know, it's also potentially if you have more non-vintage wines where you don't need, and the blends are really the same from year to year, then one option is completely that if you need to put more non-vintage labels, that this year you pay for a more expensive version and you only have a certain number of vintage specific labels. Next year you could drop down to the cheaper package. So it's really, we want to make it really as similar to how you're thinking through your labeling processes yourself. Like we're trying to make this feel as natural as possible to how you're producing your labels. So
okay, there is no more question for the moment. I think it was very interesting and very helpful for everybody about this new EU regulation. Anyway, this webinar is recorded, so all the people attending this webinar, they will receive the link to watch again if they want. And if you have still any question, we can still receive the question after the webinar. I will be happy to transfer all the questions to Jonathan, and I guess he will be happy as well to answer to your questions. I have another one, questions coming. No, I think I can answer, but the number, yeah, the number of e-label is of course by vintage, not by number of bottle. Correct. Yeah. Correct. I think someone maybe arrived a little bit later and ask if we can get a demo of the making one code, but I think you made it already, so you can watch again the webinar, because we are going to send the record of the webinar, so there is already a demo of how to make a one code. Okay. You can share the link. But the people asking also if they can share the link with colleagues. Yes, you can share the video with colleagues. No problem. No problem. The video will be, yeah. When you will receive the link, you can watch at any time, and you can watch also with other colleagues. So I have many thanks to you, Jonathan. Great help, many thanks. Just fantastic and helpful. Thank you very much. So thank you very much to everybody attending this webinar. And as I said, you will receive all the information by email, and also the link to watch again this video. Thank you very much, and see you next time for another webinar organized by Break Events. Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a nice day.